In this video, I will be detailing how I repaired rust in the Cowl and Firewall area of my 1986 Ford F-250. Here in this picture, you'll see that is rust forming above the e-brake pedal inside the cab, and then this picture shows rust forming above the brake pedal inside the cab. I will be detailing how I fix this and all the steps necessary to complete the job. Here I'm working on the cab of the truck for the extended cab. I have already pulled all the accessories and everything off the firewall, pulled all the wires through. I even cut out a little rust hole there and then one down here. But this cowl, as you can see right here, is right up in here. Let's see if I can get in there. That seam sealer all rotted away, peeled up. So now it is just, the water got in there, leaves, debris and crap, and it rotted through here. And then right next to it over there, then you come over here behind the AC box and it rotted out some, or it's starting. So I'm going to be pulling off this plate right here and then cutting the cowl right along the top there, and then cutting this seam up here and right there to all the way across to pull the cowl off and make a proper repair. So right now on this plate, I'm just identifying where the spot welds are, and then marking them with a paint marker so that I can go back or go through, drill them out, or use a little belt sand or something to unstick them so I can, because this is layered here. This piece is an outer side, and I want to pull it off so that I can gain access to everything behind it. So I'll come back once I get that off. Okay, so here we've got the spot welds all drilled out. There was quite a few of them. There they are. If you guys are going to do this, that's the spot welds that I drilled out. The threaded part that holds the steering column in place, those all, so this back metal, was actually pushed into them and kind of threaded. So you got to separate those. I just used a putty knife, Harbor Freight. It's got this metal backing and a hammer, and just smacked it in there, kind of like drove it in there like a chisel. Now you can see the rust that I'm battling with. That one's probably going to be similar to that. You can see the cowl's all rotted through up there. Over here I've got pinholes. So that's all going to get fixed, but that's the reasoning behind doing this. I just look at the back of that. It's not very pretty. So when I'm done with this, it will not have this. This will all be reinforced, and it'll be stronger than it was from the factory. So for those of you who might be doing this yourself, I just wanted to show you real quick how I made this plate. I used that piece right there that I drilled all the spot welds off of, and then put it up on a sheet of 1/8" just sheet that I had, and then traced out the steering column hole. Well, I lined up the clutch master cylinder hole, drew that one first, and then I did the steering column hole and the brake booster hole. I'm not going to worry about that hole over there. It's not necessary, doesn't go to anything. And I just laid it on top, clamped it, traced it, and then used hole saws and various drill bits and a grinder to cut it out. So here's what I came up with. This I just cut with a grinder and just, used a burnt up wheel to get in that area, and then this curve. So for this hole right here, let's see, let me get this so you guys can see it. That's about a 1 1/4, 1 1/8" hole saw I used for that. Yeah, probably 1 1/4. It's a little bigger than 1 1/4, but they're slop. And then this one I used a 2 1/4" hole saw, 2 3/8, something like that. And just This one I eyeballed through I set the brake booster up and figured out where on the hole it would sit and how far, where the hole needed to be, and then just eyeballed it and ran it in. This one I drilled with this plate still clamped on top of this one, and just used that hole as a guide as to where to center the hole saw at. And that one I just freehanded and it lines up perfectly. I drilled these holes out. They're like 7/16, and that one's probably a hair under 3/8. And then those I drilled out to, I think, 1/4 inch. I have to open them up probably when I go to put a rib nut in there, but that's that. I did draw the line that I have to trace for right there on the cab to make it line up. So I'm going to do that real quick and then I'll come back. Okay, so I've got the area that I'm patching cut out of the firewall. Here's exactly why I was cutting it out. As you can see, that seam is full of rust. Like it's pretty bad. And you can just see this. Like, look at that. It's not even pliable. It just rips right off. And then you can see right in there is the cab. So it leaks water all over the pedals, and then it runs down the firewall, down the carpet, soaks the floor mat on the driver's side, starts to rot out the floor, rot out the rocker. Just not a good situation at all. I have it going on in my single cab as well. After I do this one and get this truck on the road, I will be doing that truck as well. It's really not that difficult thus far. I'm just doing it with an angle grinder. I've got an angle grinder, cordless drill, some clamps, tape measure, steel, marker, nothing that if you're working on a truck, you probably don't have in a bench grinder, but you could even do it without that. I mean, obviously you'll need a welder, but it's really not that hard. As you can see here, I traced the outline of where the panel goes. I'm going to be, I forget what kind of weld this is, a lap weld. So the panel's going to come here, and I'm going to weld it right along this black line. So I left a little meat that it can sit against. As you can see there, I've got to figure out what I want to do there. I'm going to weld it from the outside and the inside, just make it super strong. I don't want to have to, deal with this again. This right here is also part of the cause of the flexing firewall. If you've had an issue with that with the bull nose or the brick nose, it's not so common in the OBS, but the firewall flexes and causes some problems with poor clutch disengagement, poor brakes, usually clutch disengagement. Like here, it was rotted here, and there's no real spot welds holding all three layers together up there. So when you push in the clutch, it pushes this, and then the clutch is really mounted to that plate there, the master cylinder. This hole right here, it doesn't have a whole lot of support. So it just pushes the firewall away from the actual brake, like the pedal assembly, and then you don't get proper disengagement. So Jeff's Bronco Graveyard makes a plate that goes around the steering column here and then ties in here and up in here for it. But this cowl was so far gone that I'm just fixing it and doing this repair. Do it right, do it once. So here I've got the Hydro Boost unit, master cylinder, and clutch master cylinder mounted up. Well, not mounted, but just test fit in there. I don't have the nuts on the back of this. I don't have the pedal assembly in either. But I just wanted to test it, make sure that it fit, and all the holes seem to line up for this. I'll pull the plate off and show you guys in a minute. But all 4 holes that hold the studs that go in the Hydro Boost unit are in. I've just got one bolt loosely put in holding the clutch master cylinder in. But it all fits nicely. I had to radius this up here to clear the cowl. All this is getting cut out. I'll show you guys. You'll see it'll clear up once I'm done with it. You'll understand what I'm doing. But fits up nicely. Up in this corner, I do have to take some of this out because it doesn't fit perfect. I want it to kind of have a radius like this over on this side as well. Bring it down. And then this corner, obviously, I'm gonna give it a little curve. Right here, as you can see, I've got to either, put a patch panel right there, weld that up. I've got to do something about that. But the box for the steering column, or the hole for the steering column, I cut in, and then I even drilled the little holes for the bolts that hold the base of the steering column in. I plan on using a riv nut in each of those holes, probably a 1/4-20 riv nut. I don't know, maybe if I can get a little bit bigger one, M10 or something, M8, I'll use that instead, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I do have to trace the back side of this and then cut it so it'll be flush. But other than that, we're making good progress. I do have to pull these back off and clean up back there. I'm going to cut a big hole in the firewall there, and then I'm taking the entire cowl off. As you can see, I drew a yellow line where I'm going to cut. Then I'm going to cut right underneath this seam, and then I'm going to get all the rust out of there. If you don't know, the problem with these trucks is in there, that seam sealer right here. It gets dry rotted and cracked with age. Up here in the Northeast, all the pine needles, leaves, all that good stuff falls between the slits of the cowl cover. There, I've got one up there. You can see how it's all got slits. The OBS trucks don't suffer, Bricknose and OBS don't suffer from this problem as much as a bullnose, in my experience, because they have little tiny circular holes instead of long slits, and long slits let crap fall into this cowl area. You can see right in there. It just builds up, holds moisture up against the metal, and then rots out the metal, and also makes it so the seam sealer just hard. It's also 40-year-old seam sealer. It hardens up with age, and that causes the water to get down in that seam on the firewall and rust it out. There's a pretty good example. I mean, this example over here was probably the best one, but it's okay. Just takes a little work to fix. At this point, I probably should have bought a new cab, as I already did something very similar to this on the back pinch weld of the cab, where the floor meets the back wall, but it's okay. It's a little more work, but I know it'll be done right in the end. So I'll come back once I have this taken all apart, taken back off. I'll show you what I've got to do. And yep. Here you can see I cut the seam of the firewall. So now the lower firewall is no longer attached to the upper firewall. I cut the seam right at the bottom of where the cowl spot welds on, and then right above the spot welds. I plan to delete the spot welds because water and moisture get in there and rust it out, and that is the whole reason that I'm doing this repair. The driver's side had more damage, as you can see, than the passenger side. I had to cut out much more because the rust went deeper. This was a pretty easy fix. It was very time-consuming, but it was straightforward. I cut out the old metal, weld in new metal. And then here you can see I've totally cut off the cowl now to expose all the surface rust and area that I wouldn't be able to get if I left it on. I was able to sand all this down and then come through and neutralize the rust with Ospo and then epoxy prime it. So here I am. I'm wrapping up on my fourth night of working on this. I've got this side all done. It just needs ground down here. This piece is in. I've got this passenger side in. The center section's done. Up underneath the center section, so there you go. You can see it still needs ground down. It looks different than a stock bullnose or OBS cab because I beat the firewall in to clear the 6th valve cover of the 12 valve Cummins that I'm putting in. Filled in that hole there, still needs ground down. Filled in that one, grounded down, and did a little touch-up work. There was a hole here for cruise control. Filled that in. There was an oval hole here. Filled that in. I'm going to re-drill a circle hole, and that's where my engine harness to all the gauges is going to go in. Right there were just 3 spot welds that I drilled all the way through. It was a little crusty underneath, so I replaced that. There were 2 holes right there. Filled those in, and there was another hole up there. I don't know what it went to, and I filled that in. Hood cable goes through there. Main wiring harness there. E-brake attaches there. The pedal. And then over on the passenger side, there was a heat shield here. I don't have it, but it was guarding these wires. I'm wrapping the downpipe, and I'm going to wrap these wires as well. Just makes it overall a cleaner look, I think. That's where the AC wires came through. I'm combining them, and they're coming through this hole all together. So I didn't need that hole, so I blocked it off, plugged it up. These holes are to mount the heater box, so those are going to stay. I've got to fix that. There's a little tin a warpage on that, but nothing terrible. I can fix that. Here I just need to clean up around the heater core holes, and I need to clean up that mounting hole. But we're making good progress. This side over here is done. I do have to, make a little triangle for right there and a little triangle right there when I go to weld the cowl back on, but I'll do that once the cowl's on. I'll do that, that'll be at the end. This is all welded up in here, up in there, that's all welded. I've still got to grind everything down and then grind it down on the inside as well, dress it, epoxy prime, seam seal, color coat, but that'll be done by hopefully the end of the week. So yeah, there's a little update on it. I'll show you guys once I've got the rest of those welded up, that one welded up, and then all ground down, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Here I got the passenger side of the firewall stripped of the paint, the original paint, and then I etched it with some phosphoric acid to get any rust that I couldn't get out with a grinder stripping disc. It's getting ready to be wiped down with wax and tar remover, and then going on to paint. Got the same thing done to the driver's side. I'm going to be priming it with epoxy primer just to give it a good solid coat so it won't rust underneath, seal it from the elements. Here, the cowl got some epoxy primer brushed on, and then I'm going to spray the firewall because I want that to look nice because you'll be able to see that. I also stripped the interior floor because I'm going to paint that too, the inside of the firewall. So I sprayed the epoxy primer on the firewall and the cowl, just did this is the second coat, and then I came back and I sprayed some black paint in the actual cowl where you won't see it. I wanted to add another layer of protection. As you can see in the bottom right, I did some seam sealer, and you'll see here I did seam sealer on the passenger side and driver's side of the firewall on all the seams to protect them from the elements. Then I got ready to spray some more primer on the inside of the cab floor, which I did 2 coats of primer, and then I top coated it with Rust-Oleum paint that I mixed up. I mixed a custom color to match as close as I could to the original light regatta blue that Ford used on the truck. So here's the inside of the cab painted, and then here's the firewall all painted. As you can see in daylight, it's a little more vibrant than original, but I like it. I'll keep it.